İzlanda, Suudi Arabistan, Afrika ve Danimarka gibi farklı coğrafyalardaki kültür ve eğitim projelerini kültürel bağlam ve yerellik üzerinden tartışmak adına aramızda. Kendilerini sunumı için sahneye davet ediyorum. Teşekkürler.
Can I change the Okay. Thank you for the invitation. It's been a long day for all of you, and I will try to keep it short and sweet, not to tire too much. I'm coming out of a practice from Copenhagen, from Scandinavia, founded more than 50 years ago, working traditionally in Scandinavian countries, but also working abroad. We have moved out to be a much more international company, the office the last years, with offices in Norway, in Munich, in Istanbul. We have an office here with 14 people right now, and a big office in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. I'm trying to profile the office now, so that's why I'm saying these things. First of all, we do architecture for people, and of course this should be evident that you do that. But in many ways, I think ourselves and our colleagues sometimes forget it. It becomes like more the shaping or the, let's say, to do projects for other architects to show off. But basically, it's all about creating spaces for people. We're using tools to do that. We're using space. We are creating these kind of this is educational space, innovative spaces. We are also using daylight because it's a scarce kind of resource in Scandinavia. You must understand that the sun you are having here in Istanbul is nothing near to what we have in Denmark, or what we have less of in Denmark. So daylight is a very, very particular resource that we really emphasize in our projects. And what I'm showing here is just a kind of a division from a Danish situation and also a Saudi one. This is the Minister of Foreign Affairs we did in the 80s in Saudi Arabia. And then, not least, but last but not least, we are research-based in all aspects, and in particular, of course, in sustainability. And it means that we have a department working with sustainability, as from the first sketch, the first ideas we get will be kind of monitored through a kind of sustainable, let's say, microscope as such. Just to finalize, we are now totally 225 people and scattered around the offices. But basically, we are still a small design office in a global context as such. I'll take you through some of the projects, and I'll also touch in the projects about the BIM. I think the reason why we got the invitation, I'm grateful for that, for this talk, is that we've been using MicroStation and Bentley for many years in the office, and it's compulsory now, if you do projects for public bodies in Denmark, to work with BIM modeling, which means that you cannot avoid it even though you wanted to. We don't want to, but you could say that. This is the National Opera in Denmark. It's a project we did 10 years ago, or opened 10 years ago. We did it 10 years ago. It opened 9 years ago. It is 41,000 square meters in the center of Copenhagen. It's all about this interface between the public realm and the activities, the cultural activity inside. Because you can say every theater have a kind of a first-class stage and auditorium, but what about the foyer space? What about the interface? Inside, of course, it's very much. When this project was driven by the fact that the donator is a private gift from a ship owner, big Maersk ship owner, and we celebrated his kind of career with all the wood and the double curved kind of wooden frontages of the balconies. But again, opening up to the water with this huge face as such. We didn't use BIM here. It didn't exist really, at least in a Danish context. and nobody could use it. There's another issue about the BIM thing. We're talking about it as everybody can use it, and I have to tell you that, and I'll show you later, we're doing the Siemens global headquarters in Munich. We had planned to do the whole thing in Revit and BIM. We had to give up because no Germans could do it. No German engineers really worked with it. We were a bit surprised, but that happened like that. Residential. This is a residential block in the west of Denmark. It's about 150 apartments, and it's symbolizing the vicinity to the water with a wave as such. You're having the morning light coming from east in here, and the evening light coming the other way, which means it's a very nice place to live. Very light, very open. Until now, we've built 2 of them. Unfortunately, in 2008, kind of plunged where the whole financial market crashed. Our contractor and developer crashed as well. And right now, we just got the news last week that we will do the rest of the 3 waves to complete it. Educational projects have been a very big issue, a very big kind of thing for us throughout the 50-year history we have had in the office, and we've done many universities from Germany, Denmark, even Abu Dhabi, many places as such. This is quite a new one. It's an IT university. They're creating software, not BIM, but another kind of software in here. And what's nice about this place is that it's all about how you, let's say, activate your knowledge from the academia into business. We had a very limited budget to do it. We had no BIM, we had nobody who even talked about that. We just had to be very efficient to do it. But we prioritized all the money in this area, which is the heart of the building, which is the place where the students meet instead of the classrooms and auditoriums in the other places. So let's say we saved a lot of money. We had very, very cheap painted surfaces in everywhere to create the atmosphere of a magic place with the cantilevered boxes coming out to create transparency, openness, and another way of understanding education. Because education is very much about giving access to knowledge, creating an invitation to go and learn and meet other students. And in this university, the 2 top floors, they were from the beginning designed to be incubator offices, so the students could start their own office after graduation or even while they were studying. And 50% of all the students in this university, they start their own business after graduation, which means it's a at least for Scandinavia, it's a huge success as let's say, an idea of how to create new business for the country. But this space in the middle is very much where you have the parties, the big openings, the big seminars and everything. And when you look up on the balconies, you see these kind of open group rooms you can be invited to be part of. We have taken a lot of the knowledge from the educational sector to the office buildings we're doing. We're doing quite a few headquarters at the moment globally, and this is one of them, the Spiegel headquarters in Hamburg. And what we've learned from the educational sector is that if you want to create an organization that kind of continuously learning or changing, you have to stage it somehow, spatially and architecturally. And that's what we have taken with us from education. This is the Hafen City in the center of Hamburg. It's a redevelopment of a huge area, and they have teared down most of the existing buildings, only a few left, but they kept some that set the tone of red block work or tiles as such. We did we're doing mostly competitions to get our jobs. We do 25 to 30 competitions a year and have to win some of them, otherwise we are not existing. And in this one we were up against 14 competitors internationally picked. And if you know the magazine Spiegel, it always had a red frame and different content in the middle. And we took that as a starting point and said we had to do something that's understandable from the city, but also from the inside, to create an office where knowledge can kind of travel and be shared. So we utilized that idea and placed it, let's say, a very light, very airy volumes on top of a brick base that kind of relates to the few existing buildings in the Hafen city. Then we, and of course this is finished project, we opened up to invite people in. So the restaurant, the cafes, they are open to the public, that there's a square connecting, there's 2 blocks, 2 parts of it, that opens up, which also was a surprise. We were the only project in the competition that did that. In the interior is kind of very spatial. We have a 14-story high atrium. We naturally ventilate that, and we work with seawater cooling as well in the project. In this project, which opened, 4 years ago now, we're using 80 kilowatts per square meter per year. It's interesting because now what we're doing in Denmark is that in average all projects, they're utilizing 40 kilowatts per square meter instead for cooling, lighting and heating. And if you compare that to just 10 years ago or something like that, it would be 200 something per kilowatt per square meter per year in energy use. And this one is using 80, and at the time we did it, it was the gold level in the German standard, and now it's just very average as such. We have a lot of bridges in the atrium connecting all the floors. Connecting because it's a symbolic, you can walk to different apartment and talk to them and get your information for a new article or research thing you're doing. But of course, to end up as a kind of an icon in the end of the Hafen city to the east, this becomes a very kind of dominant figure in Hamburg. Another project we're doing right now, and we have been using, when we did the competition in Copenhagen, we were using Revit and BIM as such, but we had to lay it down because our partners, our engineers, and maybe the contractors could do it, but at least the engineers, they couldn't work with it. So we had to go back to 2D drawings as such. And that's a bit strange because this is maybe the most ambitious headquarter being built at the moment in the world, sustainable-wise, technology-wise as such. This is the center of, down here, the center of Munich, Wittelsbacher Platz, which is a very quite known plaza. And then there is the Museumsviertel, which is a museums area over here. And what we did in our competition was to open up the whole ground floor to invite people to walk through. So we're creating a headquarter where the public can walk right through the facility. And if you think about Siemens with the corruption scandals and all they had, this is a new thing, transparency and openness. So you walk from the historical plaza here, come in, walk right through here. This is the inner atrium, and out here. And here we're showing the historical, let's say, representation of Siemens, from Herbert von Siemens to the modern Siemens that are doing space technology, electrical cars and stuff like that. We gave each of these courtyards a name: the beer garden, the water garden, the green plaza, stuff like that, to give them identity, but also to create places where staff and citizens, people of Munich, can choose where to go. This is the historical part. I must say, after the Second World War, you only had the facade left here, and this building was totally gone, and it's all rebuilt, so it's not really historical. We're not talking about, buildings of the quality we had just in the lecture before. It's rebuilt, and it's a representation of an historical situation. But what we did here was that here it was totally blocked with a building we opened up, so now you come in a courtyard that takes you into the Siemens complex. And inside we have these courtyards that kind of opens up to the sky. We have opened the courtyards so the facades are kind of angling. It means that we are taking the daylight much deeper in to the courtyard, but also means that we have a much better daylight distribution on each of the floors on our way down. Usually it's only on the top floors you have an okay daylight situation in a courtyard, but in this one, just by angling 3 degrees, a lot is happening. We can see that in the measures. Up in the building, we have created kind of let's say a main promenade in the center that connects all the departments, but also connects the courtyards. So you look from one courtyard to another, and again, like I talked about from the IT university, we want to make it transparent and obvious that people can go to another department, make some discussions, and go back again. It's not a closed door, it's an invitation. We worked with a very special ceiling system. It's just been cancelled right now, where we had woolen plates with light on to make the acoustic situation, but also to create light here, to secure maximum floor-to-ceiling height in the offices. And then the modern phase, let's say the high-tech phase of the Siemens complex with louvers that can bend to the west. The last project, and I haven't said much about BIM. The last project here we used a lot of BIM. This project is the National Concert Hall and Conference Center of Iceland, and Iceland, as you may recall it, was the country that really was the first to collapse in the financial meltdown in the whole world. And that was because in Iceland you had something called geyser economy. Do you know what the geyser is? Kind of, it shoots off the water. And they were very proud of that economy. The problem was that there was not enough water in the water hole under the geyser. And they were doing a lot of risky business anywhere. They were, I think, Icelandic property developers bought 40% of all Danish real estate at some point, and they are all out now. They went bankrupt, all of them. We started this project before the financial meltdown. It was a PPP project, so we had financing, we had the running of it for 30 years, and maintenance, and of course the construction as such. And the client body who worked with us, they wanted to have BIM, or kind of a BIM, in the early stages of this. And that meant that we worked with it, and everybody took that challenge on. Iceland, if we talk about we have a daylight as a scarce resource in Denmark, then Iceland is a place to go. Because in the winter time, in January, you can have days with only 3/4 of an hour daylight. It's so dark that me as personally I get very depressed being there in that time. And then in the summertime you have almost 24 hours of daylight. There's maybe half an hour it's a little bit dim, and it means that you have to have full darkened curtains in your bedroom, otherwise you can't sleep in the summertime. So that become a factor for what we did. You also have this very kind of dominant nature, almost wild nature, with a lot of wind, because in the middle of the North Atlantic, and the big kind of rivers with waterfalls. In the island you have the volcanoes. Remember a couple of years ago all planes were stopped in the northern hemisphere because of a volcano went off in Iceland again? That's how it works in Iceland. That kind of maybe symbolized the whole way of living. So you have the lava, the wild sea, the extreme daylight, the extreme darkness. In many ways, Iceland is an extreme place as such. This project is a project placed in a new development in an old industrial harbor, the East Harbor of Reykjavik. We did the whole plan, also for a bank project, a commercial street, hotel, and stuff like that. And slowly we are coming to a situation where that will happen, even though it was completely stopped. But this project already started, and the discussion was, would you stop it or would you keep it going during the crisis? During our research in the competition, we looked at what is the most Icelandic kind of configuration or thing besides the wild sea, the extreme climate, the wind and stuff like that. And that is this stone, the basalt stone, which is typically having kind of 5 edges around it, and it looks like this if you go to the outskirts of Reykjavik or the mountains, 50 kilometers from there. And then we started collaborating with Olaf Eliasson, an artist from Denmark and Iceland, half and half, to create a building complex that kind of encaptured this particular quality. And this is where the BIM thing really came in, because to do this was extremely expensive, but also to keep on track with all these different kind of options of doing that kind of, we call it bricks, and you see it right here, the brick as such. This is a scale model, 1 to 5, done in Olafur's workshop in Berlin, where we looked at the play between colored glass, clear glass, and mirrors to create this magic box. Of course, somehow we wanted to react to the situation that you have this extreme darkness all winter. So if we could create a building that would light up, become a beacon in the wintertime, and in the summertime suck in the daylight and made the whole venue totally lit by daylight, that would be something. It was, I wouldn't say more or less traditional, but it was like many smaller places globally that wants a concert hall. They have to work with a more multi-purpose venue. It means that you can have, this is very much for music, but then you could have car exhibition or a big party, or you can have examinations of students from university and stuff like that. Otherwise, these places, they are not affordable. They have to serve different functions to be viable as such. So what we did was that we took these more or less standard boxes. They are designed acoustically from Artect in New York, and I don't know if you know that there's 2 schools in this kind of projects. There's the Artect school, which is a shoebox version of a concert hall, and then there's the horseshoe-shaped one, which is the more kind of North Italian one, the traditional. And these Artect guys, they kind of want to have the box, and then you kind of decorate the box inside. Looking at it from a sectional point of view, is of course there's a big one and 2 smaller venues as such. The BIM model here we used to find out what would be the right version to serve this multi-purpose situation, because you cannot optimize it totally. Where you in a concert hall for opera or an opera, you can do it so it works perfectly for classical music, or a concert hall for classical music or modern music. But in this kind of venue, you have to kind of compromise a little bit to do it. The opera I showed in Copenhagen, the task was to do an acoustic environment second to none globally. So we did that with the acousticians from London doing that, but we didn't compromise anything at all. We were spending millions and millions and millions and millions to achieve the best acoustic. But in this one, we had to choose different options to balance it somehow. And the BIM models were used to work with that. And this is a picture we took out from a lot of the testing we did with that. We also used the BIM for making a representation, bit technical but also spatial, about how it would look with the 2 different kinds of facades in this space. And then we used the BIM a lot to decide and optimize with the engineers the bricks. They were built in China. We had 1,000 something of these. They are like 60 centimeters deep, 2 meters and 70 tall, and they are kind of angled somehow, so they're a bit complicated to do. When we had the first load of them, there was quite a few with a ship coming from China, and we started, or the contractor started mounting them on site. They start cracking, and it turned out that in the corners here, that the Chinese contractor had kind of saved a little money and used a different metal than we had described in our tender. So they took them all back, and it took another 7 months before we could go on. And of course, to look at the BIM was also used to look at the impact of this kind of facade structure and coordinate it with the main structure of the building. And there's plenty of more details, but as I haven't been working with BIM in that way, I think it's much better to stay with the specialists we heard this afternoon. We started constructing it, and as soon as we're done the concrete, we had the final financial meltdown, and the project stopped. The whole site stopped. Half of the people were bankrupt. The companies were bankrupt as such. But then the government in Iceland decided that this project should show that even despite the crisis, they could survive. So in this time, this project became a symbol of survival, even though you're really, really far behind. And I have to say thank you to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to pay to Iceland, because without these people we would not have been able to do it. So we could see when Iceland were getting funding, we started again, and then they were drying out with the funding. We had to ease down on the building side and then up again. So we had a very, let's say, slow, wavy kind of process for the construction. But we got started, and we slowly moved on, and of course eventually the speed became bigger and bigger, also because the financial situation for Iceland became bigger. And what's interesting with the project was that this symbolic character as being the one surviving the financial meltdown was also a symbolic kind of gesture to do a building that would create a new destination for Iceland. A destination that would bring in, let's say, another level of magic to the very magic country that Iceland really are. So what we're looking at here is almost this facade here is this facade. And you see, because of the sun and the daylight, it turns out completely different. You see the different parts with the colored glass, the mirrors, and the clear glass playing in here. And at summertime, it means that inside it's a bit magic, but especially in wintertime, it really glows up, and I have a picture of that as well. And this is the harbor of Iceland, and this is a very normal day. It rains a lot, snows a lot, and it's very windy as such. It becomes, in average, 10 degrees in summertime. So that's the warm days. 7 degrees is where you start wearing shorts, just to give you information about that. If you come to Iceland, you have to know that. And again, just to show you how kind of, let's say, both complicated and simple we try to do this, but complicated because it's complicated to do something simple, but also to show the playfulness of the two typologies of facades. This is the restaurant in the top floor overlooking the sea. When I show this picture in China or in Saudi, people think that this is gold. It is not, it's just glass. But it's the same clear glass that makes this. And this is an evening time at the same corner. You see the restaurant up here, and how much it changes. So utilizing the daylight as the most important design factor was a kind of a goal. And in many ways we achieved at least this feeling of the magic of the country. So let's say the project, let's say, shows something that's already there, but emphasize it in many ways. And then coming to the more complicated blocks that makes this, and looking at later the same day how much it really changes as such. This hollow structure, you can service it from the inside. We have issues like you have to keep 600 Pascal water and wind tightness of the facade, which means that it's complicated in a normal facade. It's really, really complicated in this kind of facade. But until now, it seems to be right. We don't have water coming in, until now at least, as such. And then by having them angling upwards as well, you're kind of mirroring the sky, and the sky becomes part of the building as such. The public realm outside, now it's been deserted in these pictures. This could be 3 o'clock in the morning on a summer day, easily. And the funny thing in Iceland is that you will see a lot of families out there 3 o'clock with the kids as such. I don't understand it. I think they sleep all winter or something like that, like a bear. But this is not a 3D representation. This is a photo of the place, and this ceiling is made of different pieces of aluminium that are, it's actually flat. It's just the way it's angled a little bit, and it was made to save money because the original ceiling was much too expensive. And again, you get these views in and out that kind of drags you to the place. Inside, it's quite simple. It's wood that have been colored. It holds 1,800 people, the big auditorium here, and in this day they're playing classical music, I can see, and it works quite well. But of course it's not the opera, it's not the acoustic quality of an opera, because it would not happen if we were asking for that. And again, some of the cuts we made to also emphasize, you see the different types of facades, the cut in here. As such, the ground floor opening up to the plaza, and let's say the transparency all the way up, the different kinds of color that of course is very dominant when you're close to it, but from a distance it looked like small pieces as such. I think this is not an active one, but it is a volcano over here. And some of the lounges, the waiting rooms for the breakout areas for the concert halls. People servicing the inner part, cleaning the facades as such, and then late evening or early morning, depends. As such. But of course, we're quite happy with this project, because in many ways we were helped with the kind of the BIM project as such, as a platform for discussions. But I fully agree with what was said before about the communication part. It doesn't really help if you don't activate this kind of tools with a verbal, or that you see people somehow. So it's a rule in our office that no matter who's going to work with who, you have to have met at least one time, even though you afterwards work electronically across borders or across climates as such. This is from the top restaurant overlooking the sea. And this project was given the Mies van der Rohe Prize this year, which, and maybe I'm not right, but I think so, it's the most prestigious prize for one piece of architecture you can get on a global scale. And the committee was sitting up here in the restaurant, and I got a call at 11:30 at evening, or was it maybe 10:30 at evening, and our guy in Iceland said, it's horrible, we have a overcast, so they cannot see the magic of the building. And then he called 11:30, or maybe it was almost 12 o'clock, and said, no, the sun is shining, it's fantastic. And that's because you have the sun in the summertime at that time in this area. Something is happening here. Yeah, just the final stuff. This is not the final picture, but again, we didn't figure this out in BIM. It's something we experienced. We were happy about it, but to be honest, it was really a surprise that it made this pattern. But in the winter time, and now we're talking winter, dark, it looks like this when you approach it, at least 15 to 18 hours per day. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Louis. Are there any questions? Sorusu olan var mı acaba? Okay.
Thank you very much. I am an architect also, Fatma. What about the facade maintenance and outside and also inside? Because when I was in Los Angeles for the Disneyland concert hall, they were just two guys with all the technologies, and they were waving, cleaning the facade with just a rope, nothing else.
In this project we have four surfaces in the deep facades, and of course you clean from the inside of one part, and then you clean from the lift. There's lifts from the outside and from the inside. Yeah, but that's why you cannot hang down. You'll hang out. So that's why you're coming up from down and up. That's how we do it now. And there's a lot of cleaning because the salty water is being poured on the facade, so there's a lot of cleaning on this facade.
Just one more question. Did you follow up any optimization process when you are designing facade in terms of the energy savings, pattern generation, less material use? Like what were your guidelines, not guidelines, but direction in facade design?
But we started out being very ambitious about the energy in this project, but we learned in Iceland that energy is for free. So they don't care, and what the Icelandic says now, that this is the most energy efficient building in the world because it's for free, and that's because they have their thermal activity is 430 degrees hot, so they get steam up, and they have heated streets in Reykjavik. They have heated streets like in a bathroom, so they never take the snow away because it just goes away. So this building didn't have this optimization with the energy at all because they couldn't understand it. Simply the client couldn't get the point why they should do it. But what the optimization came of was to the construction cost. We had to save a lot of money in it, which were in many ways maybe good for the design. We took away the most crazy stuff and replaced it with a more kind of subtle way of doing it. And that was, for instance, all the ceilings in the building. The facade, this part of the facade, the hollow one, we optimized this as much as we could because we got it built in China, and when we started building it, we had to come back to some of the more chunky parts we had taken out. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen.
Luis Peker'e tekrar çok teşekkür ediyoruz ve konferansımızı toparlamak adına kapanış konuşmasını yapmak üzere tekrar Bentley Orta Doğu Yapı ve İnşaat Genel Müdürü Hasan Dajani'yi kürsüye davet etmek istiyorum.